it's possible, okay, that this thing handles as good as a Cayenne. I still remember when the Audi Q7 was launched, not this car exactly, but still second gen version, just in its first form. And my first impression was, damn, it's really big.
That's what she said!
And it must have been a long time ago too, because I recall having the Q7, this generation Q7, on a magazine cover. Somehow, this is the same car. Its final form maybe. I mean, technically it is a 10-year-old model, but here, now, it doesn't seem that huge. Among the Deutschlanders, this one is 462k, making it about 30,000 ringgit less than a BMW, which is a PHEV, and a whopping 82,000 ringgit less than a GLE. Only the XC90 undercuts the Audi, and the Volvo is 30,000 ringgit less than this. But really, I think this fight is down to the Merc and the Audi. Both are the biggest of the big boys. They've got 3 rows of seats, all-wheel drive, and for better or worse, they make their 3-liter 6-cylinder engines a centerpiece of the experience. For better, if you ask me. But, spoiler alert, I think this Audi actually curb stomps the Merc in quite a few areas in terms of specs and equipment. And why the undercut? Well, this is the big deal, by the way. This, drum roll, is the first time that Audi is locally assembled in Malaysia. Audi has sort of always been, in their own way, missing in action in Malaysia. Not their fault, by the way. Well, it's not all their fault, because the government here slaps a big fat tax on imported cars, basically much like a tariff as a barrier to entry to access our market. Protectionism. Unless the automaker plays along and sets up shop to assemble cars here in Malaysia. Speaking of which, and I think this is the bigger deal than actually competing with the GLE and the X5, this Audi is the third of the VW Group big SUVs to be locally assembled in Malaysia. You've got Porsche with the Cayenne, the base Cayenne, in 2023, and then last year the Touareg. So finally, the Audi makes 3. All of them ride on the same MLB Evo platform, along with the Bentley Bentayga and the Lamborghini Urus, by the way. And all have the same 3-liter V6 petrol engine with about the same power too. Are they all just non-identical twins? Which badge do you like best? Which can you afford? I'll tell you what, guys, I gotta give props to the Audi design team, because I had to do double take with this car. I thought maybe that this was the all-new 3rd generation that doesn't actually exist. I had to do a double take to make sure that they didn't introduce a new car when I wasn't paying attention. Now, the front end of any Audi has to be really important, right? It's got to be imposing and instantly recognizable. And the same thing with this single-frame hexagonal grille. This car looks great in the front, but on the side, it looks a little bit swollen. Like this element over here kind of bulges out from the front a little bit. Kind of takes away from all that ganasness. In front, you get standard matrix LED headlights, which are super bright at night. It's like daylight almost when you turn them on. The laser light high beams are even brighter. Of course, Audi even pioneered this whole matrix LED technology back with the A8 in what, 2012? Wheels are on 0.2, which is 22 inches Audi Sport 5V spoke alloy wheels running on Bridgestone Turanza T005 tires. So touring tires with a sporty edge. Good choice. Colors: Mythos Black, Daytona Grey, White Tomo Blue. They all look cooler and they sound cooler too. This one is Glacier White, which does sound the coolest, temperature-wise. And it does accentuate all the blacked out shadow trim of the S-Line package, but it is the most mid color of the 4. Whatever, I guess it's all preference. But the big reason why it looks better than it did before is because, well, most of the time it sits lower to the ground like a tall wagon, because it rides on air suspension, which, spoilers, I didn't realize at all given how well it drives. And guess what other VW Group car in Malaysia has air suspension? The Cayenne. I'm gonna say right now, this thing drives like a freaking Cayenne. And I'll tell you one thing that the Cayenne doesn't have that this car does: rear wheel steering. Boom, Audi did. And despite having a big V6, it sounds pretty good. It does not make the mistake of having stupid fake exhaust exits like the GLE. And since I'm here, the engine. 340 PS, 500 Newton meters is the same EA839 3-liter turbo V6 found in the Cayenne and the Touareg. 0 to 100 in 5.6 seconds. It also gets a 48-volt MHEV belt starter generator that can give it a power boost here and there and helps with efficiency. Audi quotes 9.1 liters per 100 km, which is pretty close to what I'm getting, to be honest. And unlike the BMW X5, which has an inline 6 but costs more, the Audi Q7 actually has 3-row seats with up to 7 passengers can fit in this car. Boom, audited. 3rd row seats fold, which you can do with a button, same with the 2nd row, alongside lowering the car slightly, #air suspension, to make the car's load height, well, less high.
So the Merc GLE with the third row seats folded, 650 liters. The BMW X5, 680 liters. The Audi Q7, 780 liters. Boom, outdated. So for reference, I'm 165 cm. I have the second row seats pushed in front just a little bit. I got a decent amount of knee room. My legs, of course, like the third row seats in most cars, the floor is just too high up. That means my knees are way off from the cushion down here. But bonus feature, every single seat on this car, besides the driver's seat, has ISOFIX points. And when it does get too claustrophobic, just have the ejector seat over here, just pull, and then you get some more space. These seats can actually be moved forward and backwards. It can give space for the rear passengers in the third row, and can also be kind of like the seat that can also recline, so choose your best setting. And then to get to the back seats, out of the car, do this, push this up, there you go, and even a button over here to lift up the third row seats if they're down. The door actually opens almost 90 degrees, pretty wide, and soft closed doors, guys. It's not a Rolls Royce or a Bentley. This is an Audi. You don't get that in the Cayenne, you don't get that in the Touareg, you don't get that in the X5. The GLE, I think you do. Also, you get carbon fiber, okay, mixed with this soft material on the top over here. Alcantara, real Alcantara this time. And the build quality is so solid. And another thing that you get in this car, you don't get in the Mercedes, is real leather, which the Artico leather in the GLE tries to do, but kind of fails because it doesn't feel really like leather. If you know, you know. What you do also get is quad zone climate control, and it has vents down here with climate control switches down here as well. Nice touch sensitive buttons, and you also get vents on the B-pillar. Very good. All cars, like I said, should have this feature. One thing I don't think all cars should have is a super heavy duty armrest, because there's no way your kids can get this down without having to get help from an adult. And then you have to go behind here, press a button with all your strength, and then get it down. And look at this hinge, guys, okay? This hinge is just for the armrest. Other cars, like the Corolla and something else as well, just flops down with barely any hinging at all. This can stand the weight of probably me sitting on the armrest. But the downside is that this car with a dark interior, there's no panoramic sunroof to let more light into the cabin. Like the BMW X5 has it, the Volvo X90 has it, the GLE has it. The Audi Q7 doesn't have it. Boom, Audi's sad. The thing is, this car comes with a startup chime, and most cars are really cheesy and corny, but this, first of all, first impressions, I love this interior because it feels so solid, so German, even though it's made in Malaysia. So you have this palm rest over here, big, chunky gear selector. It feels like you're in a man's car, like a big, super solid machine. And to be honest, when you do press the brake and shift into gear, the action is really quite solid. It does require a little bit of force, not too much though, but it feels substantial, like very deliberate, I guess. You can't really, shift into reverse by mistake. There's nothing in here, nothing at all that I would call cheap or chintzy or like, you know what, they cut corners here and there. Nothing. In fact, I'm trying to think back a couple of years ago when I reviewed the Cayenne. Was it like this? Because I haven't really driven the Touareg. But I imagine this is a lot more luxurious than that because the price and just Audi, how it's positioned between Volkswagen. But the Porsche seems like a more one-to-one comparison. The Porsche is more expensive, but can you feel that expensiveness in the cabin? I don't think so. I think this is a more expensive feeling cabin. And another thing with the materials, this just, again, curb stomps the Mercedes-Benz on materials and build quality because, all right, this area over here, the dashboard, okay, seems kind of innocuous. You can just kind of like ignore it if you want to, but you put your hand on it and it feels like a really solid, thick piece of material, whatever it is. But the leather that's on top of it isn't just for show, like a thin piece of whatever. And then you come down a little bit, you have this kind of like obscured air conditioning vent. Over here, you have this little panel, okay, that extends all the way across the dashboard, glossy, piano black, and it integrates with the screen really nicely. And below that, you have actual carbon fiber. Okay, look, I have no measurement tool to measure, is this actual carbon fiber, but it looks like it. It feels like it. It feels really good and really solid. Like I can't break it, like it should be a part of a Formula One car. And then you have all this different kind of like satin finish material which you think is aluminium back in the day, but these days with a lot of cheaper cars from China, they have the same finish on plastic to look like aluminium, but this is actually cold to the touch. Every part too, you like dig around the interior and everything that you think is metal is actually metal. And the same thing again with the quality of the seats. They are perforated, they have ventilation and massaging, and then they look like sports seats because they kind of are sports seats. In fact, with the Audi Pre-Sense system, they have active bolstering as well, which I'm not sure. Maybe I gotta push the car a bit more, but when you're cornering, I haven't really felt it. But when it senses danger, it actually like tightens up around you. Really, really cool stuff. Through the binnacle, you have this Audi virtual cockpit. So a 12-inch screen for a digital display, and Audi is one of the first car companies to introduce like a virtual cockpit type thing, but you have it over here. It works really, really well, and that's accompanied by a 10-inch infotainment screen. I think they call it MMI, whatever. You also have a persistent screen over here. Down below that, 8.6 inches, that's always on to cover things like HVAC, air conditioning, climate control, all that stuff. I'm not sure. I'm actually in two minds of whether I like it or not, because I know what they're going for. They don't want to lump everything into one screen. It's kind of a lazy way to do car design and interfaces, but over here, it doesn't quite work as well as it could. Of course, it has Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, wireless or wired, up to you. With this dual screen, okay, it tries to integrate functions between the two and tries to be intelligent about it, but sometimes it kind of fails because, you press this button over here to go into your alternate settings within this smaller display, and then your CarPlay or whatever else is on the screen disappears until you switch into whatever function that you just pulled up and then go back, and then you get back your navigation. I don't understand why this doesn't actually facilitate that change in function without having to bother whatever's happening on this screen. And then something I haven't seen for a long time in a modern car, which I haven't seen in an actual 2024, 2025 car, is this little stalk over here. Look, my car, my personal car, has passive cruise control via one of these stalks, on the steering column. But this car has it too. Usually you have it, nicely integrated into the steering wheel somehow, something a bit more canggih lah. This one is just a little stalk down below here, and it's really complicated. I think you need to, really get used to it, how to set the speed, increase the distance between the car in front of you. The system itself is very complex and actually very competent, but this is very 1995. I forgot to mention, because this is an Audi, right? Of course you get a Bang & Olufsen stereo. In this case, you do get 19 individual speakers. It sounds absolutely outrageous. In the back, I think it's one of the reasons why you don't get a spare wheel of any kind, is because you get a subwoofer in the back alongside all the pumps for the air suspension, as well as some of the MHEV stuff for the engine, for the efficiency. But storage inside the car is kind of lacking, because you do get a very, very large door bin. And in fact, this door pocket down here has a recessed area where you can kind of like stuff your umbrella, stuff your bottle very deep within the door pocket. Very, very nice. But let's say you want to take your bottle out of the door pocket over here. What else do you have? Well, you have cup holders, which can just about fit, not really all the way down, this medium-size-ish bottle. Ignore the fact this says Volvo over here, by the way. And, I'll just put it into the center cubby. Oh wait, no, it is super shallow. Just enough space for a wireless charger. And I have this, and it barely just sticks out. That's how shallow it is. Then you have glove compartment, nice felt lined, huge actually. You know what, maybe it makes up for the fact that I have no storage center cubby. You can put all your stuff into the glove compartment. The other thing is that this car, it has a button on the screen to turn all the active safety stuff off. When I saw that, I'm like, yes, this is for me. This is the car for me, because every time I get into a car, I turn off all the active safety to not get in the way, because it can be annoying. In this car, great, turn it all off. But then, whenever I go a little bit closer to the line in the lane, the car would actually kind of yank the steering wheel a little bit. And I thought, like, what the hell? So actually, you can turn off all that other stuff, but lane keep assist is always persistently on, and is never anywhere in the menus to turn it off, until I figured out you actually have to press a button over here, which is kind of obscured and not even really labeled correctly, and then you can turn it off. possible, okay, that this thing handles as good as a Cayenne. I think if you give me the cars side by side to drive the Cayenne and drive this, I would say, okay, the Cayenne has got something extra, that little bit of edge. But for the most part, this is 90% as nice handling in normal driving as the Cayenne. I'm going to say it right there. Because the engine is the same, the sensations are the same, the auditory experience is almost the same. You get air suspension. I honestly thought this wasn't air suspension because it feels more taut. It feels like a really well salted multi-link setup, front and rear. So it just doesn't feel like an air suspension, that little bit of cloudiness to how you perceive the bumps and everything. It is over smaller undulations in the road, you do feel that busyness. But when you carve a set of bends together, and those bends are not the most smoothest of roads, you feel the air suspension doing its thing. It really kind of like just levels you out. But when you go over more rutted surfaces, it doesn't feel like an air suspension. It feels like really high quality coils. It's comfortable. But if you are going for ultimate comfort, I think you're better served in the GLE, better served in the XC90. But this is most relatable to the X5 and the Cayenne in terms of handling, in terms of feel through the wheel, feel through your bum. Yeah, it's really, really, really impressive. Despite having 7 seats, despite being heavier, and despite being one of those cars you don't expect. It's sort of a sleeper performance SUV, this thing. So if you want a Cayenne, and you want it for the drive and not for the badge, yeah, consider the Q7, guys. Do not sleep on the Q7 because this is so sorted out. Right there, okay? The rear wheel steering helps so much. That U-turn felt like I was in a Porta-Beza or something, okay? Because the turning circle is so tight with this thing. And at higher speeds, you really do feel it. When you want to drift into the overtaking lane a little bit, you kind of just wiggle your hands just to nudge it into the overtaking lane. You can feel the smoothness because it lines up with the front wheels to change direction very, very stably. You can really, really feel it. It is a big difference. It makes this car so much more manageable just on the road, just in town. I can't express how otherworldly this car feels, how much more agile this car feels with rear wheel steering. It's a game changer, and I'm so glad the back and forth between the engineers in Germany and Audi Malaysia insisted, guys, we need to have rear wheel steering because the competitors don't have it. All right, we'll be the only ones, and we might even make people convert from a Cayenne. How about that? If I would have picked all the German SUVs from the German manufacturers, and I had the money to pick one, I would actually probably pick this. Second place would go to the GLE from Mercedes-Benz. I do like the way the BMW drives, but it's a PHEV. That PHEV is really good, by the way, okay? And on first drive, you can't help but be impressed by it. But the value retention is just not there, man. It puts you off. It'll put me off. And it's just a more complicated car. If I could afford this level of car, I wouldn't really be concerned about saving a little bit of petrol or having an EV boost here and there. All I need this car to do as an SUV for my family is to be smooth, is to be good to drive, is to be safe, is to be spacious and practical, and offer me all the gadgets and all the bells and whistles and the luxury and the build quality that I want. And this ticks all those boxes. It ticks all those boxes so well in that classic Audi way because the build quality in here and the quality feel is definitely luxurious. I would say it's even better in terms of luxury feel and finish and materials than the GLE, even though the GLE is about 85,000 ringgit more expensive. So yeah, 340 PS, which is a little bit less than what you get in the Cayenne, but the same amount of torque, 500 Newton meters, 0 to 100 in 5.6 seconds. No, I am not going to test it because this car just begs you to drive it smoothly. Not slowly, but smoothly. And going from 0 to 100 in 5.6 isn't smooth, isn't like the smooth operator this thing wants you to perceive it as. it doesn't feel like a 10-year-old car. It really doesn't. It feels so sorted out. It feels so solid. It feels so together. And honestly, I wouldn't even guess this is a CKD, because you have that. Maybe it's placebo. I step into a Porsche, step into an Audi, and I can feel, whoa, this actually does feel like a higher tier build than the other cars and than the Mercedes, maybe even more than the BMW. It's just more solid. Same thing with Porsche. And in this, well, it's assembled in Pahang, bro. And the footage you might be seeing here might look better if I did have a sunroof. But besides that, I wouldn't actually miss it, because you would definitely need to have your aircon set to a lower temperature setting and a higher fan speed if I had a sunroof. Just the heat build up in the cabin is definitely more significant with a sunroof. That's just how it is. And then you get the leaks and stuff, and it's just and okay, Audi, if you are listening, maybe keep the non-sunroof option for this car, but also give us the option in this case for different interior colors, because you can solve the airy cabin or the more closed-in cabin problem in this car by messing around with the color combo. Right now it's just black, and carbon fiber, which is black, and black leather, which is black, and just soft touch materials, which are black, and a little bit of white silver stitching here and there. Just give us a white interior, give us a tan interior. It'll do wonders for this car and give you that extra edge, because everybody else, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, not Volvo, but the other two German cars, German SUVs, do the same thing. Give you a black interior and no other choices. It has proved me wrong, because I thought they're making a big mistake by locally assembling the Q7 first. But actually, it might be actually a stroke of genius. It is here to set the tone for all future CKD models, because they presumably would have to match the quality and the fit and finish and the QC levels of this car. And it's really, really high in this car.
You could make the case that the Audi is late to the party, but the party was growing stale until it showed up, honestly. And it showed up to the party after its brothers did, the Cayenne and the Touareg. But somehow, it is still the most fun one of the bunch. I don't know how that's possible, guys. I honestly was pessimistic about the Q7 being locally assembled, and I was like, why? What? Why now?
But the Q7 literally ticks all the boxes when it comes to a big premium SUV. It's literally got all the features, except maybe a sunroof, which, to be honest, I prefer not to have in the long run. It really is the full package. I have no idea how else to describe it, because it is priced below the BMW and way below the Mercedes. So it's as good looking and sporty looking, whichever you want, as the X5. It's as luxurious feeling, or even more so, than the GLE. And best of all, it is as good to drive, give or take, as the Porsche Cayenne. And it's more practical. So Audi Malaysia, what's next?